I don't want to spoil too much, but we get one of the most incestuous scenes in House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones yet. And that's saying something for this show. It's just like, I was like, what's going on here? What's like, oh my God. And you realize exactly what's happening. I don't want to go into too much detail of that, but I was like, yep, this might be the most incestuous scene in this series. And again, this is focusing on a family where pretty much what they've always done to keep their bloodline pure is just fuck each other. You know, brothers and sisters, uncles and nieces and everything else in between. It's not even like, oh, you know, second cousins, first cousins. It's like, no, it's even worse than that. You know, it's even worse than stuff with like, you know, Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. Like they go like, no, you haven't seen anything yet with this. And I was like, oh my God, it's pretty creepy, pretty gross, pretty weird. Let's go ahead and move on to my review for House of the Dragon Season 2, Episode 5. So we're coming off of what was probably the best, if not, you know, the best episode in House of the Dragon so far. And I think you can also make an argument one of the best episodes just in general for just Game of Thrones content and various spin-off shows. You know, along with all the political intrigue and, you know, tense conversations and Daemon just tripping balls in Harrenhal. we got an amazing land battle and dragon battle, you know, featuring Rhaenys, Aemond, and poor dumb Aegon, Aegon the Second. You know, no one wants to listen to him. No one wants his advice because it's probably going to be dumb. But all this resulted in a very climactic finish with the death of a major character and scores of others dead too. You know, it was everything you could possibly just want in an episode of House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones for that matter. You know, I'm not surprised then that like the next episode would be more calm and like laid back as, you know, both sides, you know, the greens and the blacks just deal with the overall fallout of the last episode and their various losses, because they did lose a lot. I'd probably still say it was still a victory for the greens, you know, because, you know, they did take out one of the dragons and they were still able to, you know, capture like Rook's Rest and everything. And believe me, they lost a lot of men. There's no question about that. You know, Aegon the Second, he's kind of derpy now and everything, and he's not gonna be able to walk right, and he's, you know, half his body's like horrifically burned. But other than that, I would say, you know, look, they came out pretty good. They came out pretty good so far, you know. And with this episode, now again, before I go ahead and get into this, I do have to reveal some aspects of the previous episode. I will have to reveal the major death from the previous episode because so much of the first half of this particular episode revolves around that character's death. So I'm forewarning you. If you don't want to be spoiled, come back, you know, a bit later after my review. But I do have to, in order to discuss this episode, I do have to reveal the death of this major character. Okay? So, of course, for those that, you know, don't know, you know, Eve's best, Rhaenys, Princess Rhaenys, she did die. Despite, you know, being a badass and killing all those various, you know, soldiers loyal to the Greens or kind of forced to work for the Greens in that case. It's Kristen Cole was going to castle and saying, like, listen, I killed your lord and I killed a lot of the rest of you. Now, you can either have all your heads chopped off or you can meet Dragonfire, or you can, you know, just work for us and continue on. You can, you know, bring back honor to yourselves and to your house and stuff. And, you know, a lot of those poor fucking schmucks died. But we also saw the death of Princess Rhaenys. And as I said, she went out in a badass. You know, she killed a lot of those guys who are attacking Rook's Rest. She pretty much takes out, you know, Aegon's dragon, although I would say Aemond finished it off. You know, she's the one that did 90% of the damage, and he was the additional 10%, and that's what kind of put an end to that. But I think the morning of Eve Best Rhaenys is a great way to just start the episode in general. You know, we see that with her husband, you know, Corlys Velaryon, who at this point, has lost just so many members of his family. His brother Aemond, who definitely talked too much. He got himself in trouble a lot, but still, that was his brother. That was part of his blood. So he lost his brother. He lost his daughter in season 1. She died under pretty tragic circumstances. Literally couldn't push the baby out, Chad. Nothing they could do. If they tried to get it out, she would die or the baby would die. She's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll just take us both out. Dragon fire. There you go. So she died. Son is TBD, I would say, to be determined, Chad. He's somewhere out there in the world. We don't know, but he's for all intents and purposes, for many of the people involved, he's dead. Only a couple people truly know that he's actually alive, but for many, they all think he's dead. And now his wife, and Steve, Toussaint, but both Steve Toussaint, who of course plays Corlys Velaryon, and Eve Best, they had fantastic chemistry with each other, both in season 1 and season 2. And his performance here, I would say, was quite good, as he just suddenly kind of realizes, wow, I've lost so much. And the episode pretty much opens up on his castle, and he has this room filled with all these different treasures and trinkets and knickknacks that he's acquired over his decades of sailing across the world to all these different cities and Essos and Sothros and everywhere else. And now it's like a mausoleum. Now it's a tomb. That's kind of what it is. And you just see him completely just break down and just look like a broken old man sitting on his throne, on his seat, the driftwood throne. I think that's what they call him. And I think he's also haunted by the past decisions that he's made. His whole thing is he's been obsessed with legacy. And continuing the Valyrian name on, but in that effort, so many Valyrians have died, and I really like that they hammered home just how much he's obviously lost, and this sets up some, I think, other interesting dynamics and scenes in the episode itself. Obviously we have Baela, who's one of Corlys Velaryon's last surviving members of his specific family, by blood, that is. That's his granddaughter on his daughter's side, and she has a really good scene with Rhaenyra in this. Rhaenyra pretty much also is sad about the death of Rhaenys, even though she's like, listen, your grandma, she didn't really like me all that much. we didn't always get along, but she was a great woman, and they talk about her past and everything that she accomplished, the queen that never was but probably should have been. I thought that was a very sweet scene. And, she asked something of Baela to speak to Corlys, and that sets up a great scene between the two of them because, in this world where you have so many individuals that are like, hey, this is it's male dominated, it's male oriented, it's what it has to be, having these women, and probably that's what all this conflict is. You had all these people that just didn't want Rhaenyra in power, partially because, she was a woman. And here, I think you have a fantastic moment between Baela and her grandfather, Corlys, where for the first time, really, we see them opening up to each other, and he actually recognizes the amazing young woman that she's become, and he's kind of like, oh shit, it kind of all hits him at once, and something is asked of him, and he is kind of struggling with that. He doesn't know if he actually wants it. It's funny. It's something that he's probably always wanted his entire life. More power, more influence, but now it's kind of come at such cost and it's presented to him. He's just like, I don't know if I even want it at this point. And so I liked all the stuff they did with the Velaryons, and we'll go back to some of the other quote-unquote Velaryons in just a bit. But we also have Daemon, and Daemon is just trying to do things his way with the Blackwoods and the Brackens and the various River Lords. We have this fantastic scene with his dragon, the Bloodworm, and Lord Bracken, who is the first time I ever introduced to this character. For those that don't know, the Blackwoods and the Brackens have been fighting each other for generations. Who knows how this feud even started to begin with? It's been going on for so long that they can't remember. They just fucking hate each other, right? And they're always trying to get back one another. They're always murdering each other's kin, of course. And the Blackwoods have aligned themselves with Daemon and Rhaenyra, and the Brackens are with the Greens. And we set up like a really cool moment where Daemon is just trying to intimidate them and the Lord with his dragon, and the Brackens are just like, you know what, fuck you and fuck your dragon. We choose fire. And then we have this amazing shot where Lord Bracken just he's like, let's go, boys, let's go. He turns around his horse and they just start walking, and he's just like, he knows like I might be fucking killed here, I might die, but I have to admit, he just has this confidence. He just has this steely resolve. It's like, I've made my fucking decision. I'm not backing down. I'm not bending my knees to this guy, to these goddamn dirty Blackwoods. No, thank you. And we get like where Daemon's dragon, the Bloodworm, is just like right behind him. And it looks fantastic. It's like, that was a pretty good scene. And even Daemon's like, you know what? I didn't expect that. I got respect for that guy. You know what, man? Respect. Kind of get some little applause. He's like, I didn't think he would just fucking turn his back on me. That's exactly kind of what I wanted anyway, because he needs people like that. He needs people that have just this steely resolve. Because he knows of the terrible conflicts that will continue to occur, to continue to happen. And so he needs those kind of fucking people that aren't afraid to fucking burn. And I think that's really cool. He's also just continuing to trip balls through a lot of these episodes. And we get, I don't want to spoil too much, but we get one of the most incestuous scenes in House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones yet. And that's saying something for this show. It's just like, I was like, what's going on here? What's like, oh my God. And you realize exactly what's happening. I don't want to go into too much detail of that, but I was like, yep, this might be the most incestuous scene in this series. And again, this is focusing on a family where pretty much what they've always done to keep their bloodline pure is just fuck each other. Brothers and sisters, uncles and nieces and everything else in between. It's not even like, second cousins, first cousins. It's like, no, it's even worse than that. It's even worse than stuff with like, Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. Like they go like, no, you haven't seen anything yet with this. And I was like, oh my God, it's pretty creepy, pretty gross, pretty weird. Like a lot of the Daemon stuff that they've focused on is him just, I think, dealing with, and this is what it gets into. It's dealing with his desire for the throne, mixing in with his very complicated feelings with his niece wife, Rhaenyra, and his own guilt for some of the things that he's done. It's clouding his judgment. Just as much as all the shit Elise Rivers has roofied him with as well. I don't know what that girl's using to make Daemon trip balls, but it's always entertaining to see him. One moment he feels like, I'm going to go to sleep. And the next moment he's like fucking awake and he's like surrounded by all these people. And he has no idea how he got there, no idea how he even dressed himself or is like eating this food in front of him. It's very bizarre, but I like that we've gotten these like weird... Listen, I've indulged in the edibles, as you guys know. Diet smoke is quite good. It makes me feel great, but I want the shit that Daemon's on because I want to just pretend, I just want to drink that or consume whatever he's consuming and then just lose huge gaps of time. I think that would be pretty goddamn awesome. So, Matt Smith, he continues to just be great in this show, and it's a cool way to present his character. And I also like that in this episode they also show that, you know what, because he learns that, like, oh shit, like Lair Strong, the clubfoot, he has all the strong like money and coffers and everything, and so they don't have any money to like really put like fix Harrenhal, to make various improvements and ready it for like a siege or various battles and stuff. And so he doesn't have any money either. He's like, fuck. And so he has to get his own hands dirty. So he's working side by side with like these peasants and carpenters and stonemasons. It's like, that was kind of cool to see. It's like, listen, Daemon. There's a lot you can say about Daemon. He's a character that exemplifies the best and worst of the Targaryens, I would say. But you got to give him credit. He's not afraid to get down and dirty and get his hands dirty and, and work for what he wants. He's not like, an Aegon the Second, if you will, who's just like, I don't really know anything. I have no idea how to be king. I have no idea when it comes to ruling a kingdom or taking care of its people or politicking in general. Like Daemon, he knows these things, but at the same time, he's also not afraid to get his hands dirty. So I think that's nice. That in itself, I think is charming and makes him likable, even though he's a very complicated character. And then Prince Jace, Prince Jace, who's Jace Valerion, quote unquote, asterisk next to that because he's clearly a bastard, of the strong household. But for the first time, we finally get like a really good scene with Jace where he goes to negotiate with the Freys of the crossing. And, of course, the Freys, which, we know about them from Game of Thrones with, Walder Frey, fantastic character. And we get to see, like, Walder Frey's ancestors. And the Freys haven't changed. Actually, these people seem a little bit nicer than like Walder Frey, but they're very shrewd. I gotta give them that. They're very shrewd. This husband and wife couple, this duo, and I liked how they kind of complemented each other. Well, it wasn't like super like one side or anything. It's like no, they're pretty in sync. They know what they want. They have their own desires. I think that was pretty cool to see with the Freys. But Prince Jace, he goes to treat with them. And he kind of proves that, he's more than capable of handling himself in these kind of negotiations. And I thought that was like really cool to see. Finally given this character who's just kind of been kept in like one location, most part, much like Rhaenyra, because I guess, she's obviously, the queen and he's the heir apparent. And so you don't want to put them in the battle, less you risk their lives. But it was very nice to actually see this character be able to do something for the first time instead of just stand around and like just kind of go back and forth with his mother and argue about kind of the same thing. So that was nice. And this also sets up an interaction between him and his mother and about what he accomplished. And Rhaenyra's just general dissatisfaction with what's happening. And how, even by her own admission, which I thought was cool, because I'm like, you know what? She's not really an effective ruler. Now, again, she's at a profound disadvantage. She was usurped, of course, and, she's kind of only cloistered away in this one castle in Dragonstone. She's limited about what she can do. She just lost one of her sons, of course. She's dealing with that grief. And we've had these council meetings where so many of the lords on her council have kind of been cutting her off or talking around her and sometimes dismissing her, or even other times laughing at her, right? But even she admitted, like, I'm not really great at ruling. She acknowledged that she's inexperienced and that she's struggling with this because... And she even admits, it's like, if I was born a boy, then I would have, like, a sword would have been put in my hand and I would have been involved in more of these negotiations. But instead, I was my father's cupbearer, and I was resentful of that, despite what my father was trying to probably teach me and instill in me. And so I thought that was cool that the series actually says, like, no. And that's what I want, because my fear for the show. I mean, it's clearly that the Greens are set up to be more villainous. I think that's obvious. Although you have, Daemon doing the things that he's doing, and they're quite villainous in themselves. But, I just wanted, I got kind of both sides to be like morally gray. And so you're constantly going back and forth, like, hey, who should rule? Whether it be the Black Council, the Green Council. And, with the subsequent episodes after episode 1, I think they've done a good job of showing that, perhaps the blacks maybe are a little bit more well-intentioned, but Rhaenyra is not a particularly great leader, and she's really struggling with that, and she acknowledges that. And so I think that was a good step in the right direction to show it's like, she needs to make improvements herself, and she's not just kind of waving it off or anything. She's like, she knows, and I think that's cool. And her son have a conversation about, like, well, we need to do something. We need to, continue our to make ourselves more powerful and to gather more allies. And they finally kind of address the whole dragon seed thing, where apparently we've met like a couple of characters like earlier in the season. Like, who are these characters? What relevance do they have to anything? And I guess a lot of these like smaller characters are being set up as like bastards of House Targaryen. But because they, despite being bastards, and they have that Valyrian blood, that would probably let them ride dragons. And so they're thinking like, oh, okay, we just need to go through like all this material, find out where some of these people are, you know, and try to get them on their side so we can get them to ride a dragon in the battle, and then thus making us more powerful. Because at this point, like even Kristen Cole admits at one point in this episode, he's just like, we've given the war to the dragons now. Like, men kind of mean nothing, you know, in the face of a dragon. And he's correct. He's right. And I thought that was cool. It's like, okay, finally we're gonna eventually start explaining like what are these other characters and what's their purpose and all this. And it's like, okay, now we know. And so now we're gonna finally have probably more interactions with these people with the main cast. Now, when it comes to the Greens, I really like what they're doing with the Greens, obviously, throughout this season, for the most part. You know, kind of opens up with them presenting the head of Meleys, the dragon through the streets of King's Landing, and they do a good job of just showing this all the strife and struggle of the peasant folk. Like, there's no food to eat, there's no bread, there's no meat, all the fucking fruit and vegetables are rotten and shit. And so when they see this severed dragon head here, which is supposed to be like, oh, it's this great victory, look what Aegon II did, even though it wasn't Aegon, it was Aemond. Isn't it wonderful? The people are kind of like, they don't know how to react, because in their minds, and I think you even have one of the characters in the crowd say, I thought dragons were gods. I didn't know dragons could die, you know? And I think like doing that's going to probably cause problems, because, you know, I think the Targaryens, I mean, it's said throughout both this show and throughout Game of Thrones, is like the reason why the Targaryens were able to rule for so long, or were so perceived to be so powerful, is because they could ride dragons, because they could command them, and they can, you know, spread their domain across Westeros. But now that you're showing all the common folk, all the peasants, that, dragons can be killed, then it makes the Targaryens feel lesser. It doesn't make them feel like gods. At that point, it's just like, they're just fucking people that just can ride big lizards. And it's like, well, if this dragon can die, then like any dragon could die. So I think it's probably that's gonna probably backfire on them. I thought that was cool, and that's like brought up in conversations. Like, this might inevitably be a mistake. Also, Aegon, he's super fucked up now, but he's alive. He's alive. You know, half his body is burnt. He hasn't been able to, like, he hasn't woken up yet. His legs are all broken and bent. He's super derpy, Chad. He looks like he lost an eyeball, just like his brother at this point. That little sucker got popped out. Not doing great. Like, they even show, like, his armor has been fused to his body, the Valyrian steel. And so they have to, like, rip that shit off. And it's just, like, super goopy and bloody and everything. Everyone's like, oh, my God. They're putting lettuce on him, chat. They're, like, different. Because I guess at this point, like, they can't put, like, very rough material on his skin because it's so sensitive. So it's pretty cool. Like, they have these, like, giant leaves of lettuce, and they're putting them in some sort of concoction or mixture, which I'm sure is supposed to alleviate the burns and help with the healing process. But they're just covering him in lettuce. He's a salad boy now, Jay. He's a derpy salad boy. I thought that was cool. And then, of course, you know, Allison, she's like, oh, Olivia Cook, I think, does a great job in this episode. She has a scene I'm going to get to in just a bit that's really just hammers home how, like, she realized how fucked up the situation is and how stressed out she is. But, you know, she's concerned over her son. And then Aemond, next to Daemon, is probably like my favorite character in the show, because he just fucking waltz in. And he sees his brother and goes, He always does that little all the time. And he's like, oh, with the king this way, someone else will have to rule, won't they, mother? And I like that. And we set up what was probably my favorite scene for this particular episode. And it was the Green Council meeting. And, like, everyone's trying to decide, like, all right, well, not that we were paying attention to Aegon II anyway, but, you know, who is now going to effectively rule the realm? Who is going to be making the major decisions at this point? And, Allison, she's like, well, it should be me. She was doing it during her husband's long illness, as she says, Viserys. And they're like, yeah, that's great and all, but you're a lady. You're a broad, and it's going to look kind of weird, especially if, we usurp the throne, so we wouldn't have Rhaenyra on there because she's a woman. And she's like, what are you talking about? I have all these skills. I have this background. Have you not seen my resume? Did you not read my cover letter? And apparently they did not. They did not do that at all. And everyone's just like, it should be Aemond. It should be Aemond, like, down the line. She's like, well, yes, he's incredibly effective in the battlefield, but he's impulsive. He's impulsive, which is true. But, and Aemond doesn't say a fucking thing. He's just sitting there to himself the entire time. But then everyone at the council meeting, aside from Alicent, they all say it should be Aemond. And at this point, he just walks around, he grabs the little marble ball, puts that shit down. He gets down to fucking business. Listen, there's a lot you can say about Aemond. He's a psychopath, sociopath, he's a kinslayer. He's done it once. He's tried to do it a second time. He came within, he was 90% of the way there, but he couldn't finish off his brother. But I got to give it to him. The guy is he knows what he wants, and he is fucking effective, and he lays down the rules and the law and how it's going to be. And what's so cool is because in this sequence, after he grabs a little marble ball, and then again, just different energy than Aegon II. He's cool, he's calm, he's collected, but he's very direct, and he's going to each person's what do you think of this? How are we going to handle this situation? And your advice is what I think we should do. All that. He's taking all that into into his decision-making process. But what's so funny is we don't see him. We just hear him, and we don't see the others as well because we're just focused on Alicent, who is just so pissed off that they all just railroaded her, Chad, and they railroaded her hard, and you just see her just dealing with that, and now she feels inconsequential. She feels weak, and she feels lost now that everyone's just fucking Aemond Targaryen, Aemond the one-eyed, he needs to be Prince Regent, he needs to be protector of the realm, and we need to listen to his decisions. And I like that in her performance. She said so much by saying so little in this particular scene. And then we just get another wonderful little scene here afterwards where Aemond, it's thundering and lightning outside, it's raining, and it's typical just evil bad guy scene, but it's just him staring at the throne. He just wants it so bad. He just yearns for it, so much. And he is an effective ruler. You got to give him that. And then he gets a little visit by his sister, who, listen, Helena, she's a lamb. She's a lamb among wolves, among dragons here. People constantly dismiss her. They think she's kind of mad, or she's just really weird or awkward. But she's having these weird visions. She's predicting the future and everything, and no one's paying attention to what she's saying. There is something going on. I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like there is just something going on between Aemond and Helena. I don't know what it is. I remember all the way back in season 1. Where Aegon is I don't have to marry my sister. To be fair, that's the reaction you should have. Listen, there's a lot you could say about Aegon II. He's impetuous. He's trifling, as Otto once said. He's dumb. He's arrogant. There's a lot, but the two things I will say about him is, he is a loving father, clearly. He actually seemed to have a really good connection with his son and enjoyed him quite a bit. And he didn't want to fuck his sister. All right, you got to give him that. You got to give him that, Chad. Now, Aemond, on the other hand, as seen in season 1, he's I'd fuck my sister. Oh, I do it. And just the way they're looking at each other and the way that he looks at her is just I think he's fucking his sister. And I actually wonder... there hasn't been anything after that episode in season 1, but I am starting to speculate. It's are Helena and Aegon's children actually Aemond and Helena's children? Was that his actual? I feel like he would add more reaction, but again, he could be a sociopath, which he actually has sociopathic tendencies. So I'm very curious about that. And so I was but and the other thing is too, he's very much like Daemon. They both have that same energy. They are competent incredibly competent and skilled, both in statecraft and politicking, but also as warriors. But they also just they do horrible things. They do horrible things to maintain their power or in their quest for power. And so I want the two of them to eventually go at each other. We got little hints of that in season 1 and stuff. And of course, Daemon knows that Aemon's a threat since he said blood and cheese to get his head. Of course, it didn't work out that way, sadly. Got a different head instead. But yeah, the two of them are they're just so great. And I can't wait because it has to be, right? They have to come into conflict with each other. They have to start fighting one another at some point, and just one-on-one. Man versus man, dragon versus dragon. I think that would be super, super exciting. But yeah, so this episode, yeah, it's not as good as episode 4. You know, I mean, it's hard to be when you're the best episode of the series, I would say. One of the best episodes just overall, both in House of Dragon and Game of Thrones. More dealing with the fallout and things. It's a little calmer. But at least they are answering questions. We did see some nice, wholesome moments between some of these characters, and just, you know, Aemond continuing to be a badass. And Daemon continues to trip balls, which is always entertaining in itself. But yeah, overall, a solid episode. Not amazing, but pretty solid. But what about you guys? I'm curious. What do you think of House of the Dragon so far? You know, at this point, you know, we only have 3. It's crazy. Only 3 episodes left. I wish it was 10. I wish it was a full 10 episodes like the last season, but you know, if they could deliver like another episode 4 this season, I'm fucking all for it. I can't wait. Can't wait for that. But yeah, solid episode. Liking what I'm seeing. Can't wait for more. But what about you guys? What do you think?
5 minutes later.
What are you guys saying? Ace of Card, hello. Do you good to see Ace of Card? Hope you're doing well. I know, Krabby. I agreed. Naya's watching. Naya's watching House of the Dragon now. And I'm sure when that incest scene happened, she's like, oh. Oh, man. Human Black Human, Damon's fine, all, but this season MVP is Simon Strong. You know what? You know what, Human Black Human? You're right. Simon Strong. He is a very underwritten, or excuse me, not underwritten. Simon Strong is a very underrated character. I really like him a lot because, again, when you kind of like look at him, he's like, you know, kind of typical, like, you know, plump, you know, little lord. Maybe you think he's like a little slow, but I don't know, man. He's actually surprisingly competent, and he's not afraid to like criticize Daemon to his face, and I thought that was like really cool. You know, in the episode itself. Yeah, I'm gonna bring up the actor who plays him, because he is, I think, doing a very, very good job. Is his name Simon Strong? Is that his name? Because that's the name of the other. Hold on, Simon Strong. House the Dragon. Yeah, you're right, Simon Strong. He's doing a great job. Portrayed, funny enough, by Simon Russell Beale. Yeah, for those who don't know this guy, I'm going to show him off. He deserves some respect here. Right there. This goddamn character. I love him. And again, he seems so unassuming. You know, he's just here. You think he's going to be your prototypical, like, plump little lordling, you know, doing what he's told, but he's not afraid to talk back, and he's actually politically savvy, and he's actually pretty funny and smart. So, yeah, I really like him as a character too. That's a great point. You're right. Yeah, he should definitely be praised, because he's been a fun new character to introduce this series.